How to deal with our shadow work. I don't know about you guys. If you're in this journey looking to develop yourself, just become a better version of yourself, rewire those old beliefs that you have. The shadow is something that we really need to talk about. You cannot have light without darkness. What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode here of Walking Manifestor. I'm your host, Alexa Peña, and in today's conversation, we're going to get into some very much needed details about how to deal with our shadow work. Because I don't know about you guys, but if you're in this journey looking to develop yourself, looking to just become a better version of yourself, looking to rewire those old beliefs that you have that have held you back, the shadow is something that we really need to talk about. You cannot have light without darkness, and I think it's something very important to understand. So with that, let's dive deep. This is going to be a two-part series because there's too much to unpack here. The first part of some tangible things that you can start identifying to understand what the shadow is actually trying to tell you, and what questions you can start asking yourself to really start understanding your shadow better. The first thing that I really want to dive into is when we're in this journey of understanding the shadow work, we need to understand that the shadow is actually acting as a map. And I think this resonates with me, this perspective, because if you see it from that theory of it being a roadmap, what they mean by this, or what I take from this, is let's say you are somebody that gets intimidated or gets bothered by people that are overly confident, right? You know, that person that goes into the room and can just make everybody laugh and can literally just make the conversation flow. And sometimes you just question like how they even think of the things they think of and why it is that things just seem to be so easy for them. And maybe you don't realize that in reality, the reason why this is actually triggering you so much and it's making you feel a certain way is because you haven't given the voice that your authenticity desires and deserves. So when we look at the shadow from the perspective of understanding that once we're able to understand the shadow, we can work with the shadow to really allow us to evolve into the best version of ourselves. Because as we will unfold, the shadow is actually trying to share with us something. And something that resonates with me in this example I was telling you is in my journey, actually, because for the longest time, I was somebody that thought the manifestation world was woo-woo. And I thought that all these people that would talk about how they had made it in life and how successful they were either a bunch of people full of themselves or a bunch of people that had handouts. That's what I thought. That was my reality because of my belief system, because of my preconceived ideas based off my paradigm, based off what I had adopted off of me seeing the people that I did when I was growing up. So when I actually see now my old version of me, I wonder what would I wanted to have heard at that time that would have made me resonate with this message. And I think the one thing that has allowed me to start really shifting my paradigm is testimonials. That's the best thing I can share with you. Because sometimes, unfortunately, even though now I can sit here and say I 100% know that what I feel in my energy, what I can think, what I can feel, what I can imagine, I can create this energetic vibration around, and I will be able to manifest. It's easy for me to say that now, right? Because my perspective has shifted. But I was having some moments to really reflect on if that would have really been something I would have resonated with back when I didn't really see things the way that I do now. And I came to the conclusion that I wouldn't have. So I asked myself, what was something that really made me feel like I could believe in more? And honestly, guys, it was the stories of other people. seeing how other people were actually working past, whether it was limitations, whether it was creating something that they wanted, whether it was working past their beliefs that I had at one point seen they had, and shifting their belief systems through stories that they would share, it inspired me to say, why not? And now I share this with you because in these times, in everything that we have going on, and everything that you're hearing on social media, and everything you're going to continue to see, the one thing that we have talked about that you can control is your responsibility. The ability to how you respond to situations that are happening. You don't have any say over how all these external circumstances can affect your reality. But the one thing you do have control over is that internal emotional thermostat. And this is huge, guys. Like, we really need to understand this, because I hear a lot of people sometimes, especially when you're in a crowd where it's likely for you to have that one person that has a negative outlook in life. And it's very easy for them, because they have put so much time into these perspectives of negativity, for them to share those messages and really influence other people in such a easy way because of how much time and energy they have put into, again, these thoughts that they have. And I think it's important that we know that the moment that we're around these situations and we're not actually giving ourselves a moment to practice this next tip that I'm gonna really share here for you to just continue to understand the importance of how these things start creating a ripple effect. This next point is really that awareness point, because it's one thing for me to tell you, hey, I was a person that didn't believe in manifesting. I was a person that had a victim mentality because I didn't have my parents. I didn't have money. I felt like the world was against me. And I can sit here and give you a list, right, of like these identity beliefs that I have around my story that I had for the longest time, right? However, it's also important for you to understand, once we're talking about the shadow being a map, the acceptance and the awareness are together. The awareness to understand that this shadow is actually trying to protect us and is actually trying to share us our biggest strength. And that's why I want to share with you the third point, which is, how is this actually coming to be? And I want to give you a quick example with the mirror principle. So the mirror principle basically says, let's say you have a mirror in front of you, okay? And let's say I basically put a dot in the mirror. And as I'm looking at the dot, right, I'm looking at the reflection, I'm literally trying to wipe off the dot from this mirror, right? That in this reality, as I'm seeing it, it looks like it's on my face, but I'm wiping it and it's just not coming off. Obviously, we're talking about two different realities. The reality that is a reflection of what's actually internally being seen. And this is why when we look at these examples of people that upset us, or things that maybe we're not being too kind to ourselves about, because I have a lot of people that tell me that, Alexa, sometimes I'm just too harsh on myself. Sometimes the way that I talk to myself is what's driving me down. And that comes from that shadow that has been literally conditioned to protect you in this way, because, and this is where it gets interesting, of these questions that we've been avoiding. And I want you to ask yourself, what is it that you're fearing the most? What do you really fear the most about yourself? And take a moment to really pause the video, pause the podcast, wherever it is you're listening to, and ask yourself, what is that one thing that I fear the most of myself? You see, this question can really lead us to understand perspectives of ourselves that we did not understand before, because we're taking the time to actually give our shadow a voice. You see, when we're trying to suppress our shadow, think of it as a beach ball. If I literally stand on top of this, right? I lay on top of this beach ball. The more pressure I'm putting on this beach ball to stay underwater, the more speed and surface is gonna come back up to the surface and literally make this reaction that, if we think of it, it's the same when it comes to our shadow. The more we suppress it, the more we have this feeling. And the real reason is because we're not understanding it. So by asking these questions, instead of looking the other way, you give your shadow a voice. Another thing is, what have you been told? Like, think about it. What has society told you about yourself that is just unacceptable? And I think this is something that for me personally resonates. And as I'm thinking about it and I'm looking at my notes and I'm reflecting, I'm like, there are so many things that I remember hearing and people telling me that were just the reasons why I couldn't make it. And because of those beliefs that they had that I chose to adopt, I started to embody this belief that was not mine and it didn't serve me. And another question that you might want to ask yourself is, what dreams or passions did you leave all because you thought you were unworthy, all because you thought that you were incompetent, incapable? Whatever your answers are, take a moment to sit with them and take a moment to understand that these can actually be your biggest strengths if you know how to understand them. You see, when I personally choose who I'm gonna learn from, I don't know about you, but I have to resonate with them. Like, if I'm gonna learn a new, let's say a new marketing strategy, or I'm gonna learn a new funnel, or if I'm gonna learn a new thing in real estate or a new thing in coaching for my manifestations, because I'm constantly investing in my development, guys. This is something I take very serious. When I look at that, I look at the person and I look at how I can relate to this person. So if there's something that I can share with you when it comes to these videos that I make to just give you information, or if you're listening to it on podcast, it's listen to the information and make sure that the people that you're listening to these stories from have something you can relate to. Because for me, I think the biggest thing that has really allowed me to see past these limiting beliefs, which allowed me to really manifest what I've manifested. And guys, it's getting crazy. Like, things are manifesting in such crazy speeds that I sometimes tell myself, like, okay, give me a second. I was barely getting used to this chapter and now we're quantum leaping to a new chapter. Life has a very interesting way of having things happen for you. And the reason why I like to really tie the psychological into the manifesting world, into the real, the explanations behind the science, is because I know that a lot of it, that's what's going to help us make sense of it. And a lot of these questions come from the psychological part of our brain. And if we really understand, it's important to really decipher and release these blocks so that you're able to really focus on what you want to manifest, on what you're looking to create. You see, manifesting is not just some word. It's not just some woo-woo. It's an actual repetitive state of mind in which you're able to attract this because you have such clarity in it. It's literally the act of repetition in order for you to bring something into this existence. It's not about sitting in your room and hoping that you're gonna get rid of your shadow. It's about actually understanding yourself and saying, hey, you know what? This is something that if I understand how I've been allowing this limiting belief, I can actually inspire others. You see, some of the people that have had the worst things done to them, that have been in the most unjust situations, are some of the best advocates that we have in our society, that are out there advocating for us. And some of the people that have been broken to such degree in which they didn't have a voice, I can attest to that. I didn't have a voice at one point. I could have not had a conversation right now in front of a camera, sat here to strangers telling them my story, all with the intention of hoping that they're able to get anything from this that's gonna help them become a better version of themselves. And when I really think about this, it actually gets me emotional, and it's crazy to think about it because we have these capabilities to now understand that these powers really come from these what we at one point saw as a weakness. It wasn't a weakness. It was your greatest strength just being redefined. And when now I talk to somebody that I feel I can see doesn't have a voice, doesn't know where to go, or feels overwhelmed, or feels like they have this victim mentality, or feels burnt out, and I see this, I know that I can share with them from experience based off my path, based off my life. And this is why it's so important for you to give your voice, your shadow, this moment for you to really understand it. With that being said, we are going to be covering more in depth some practical approaches as to how you can start really working with the shadow, because like I said, I feel like this is more to uncover. I do also want to let those of you know that if you're interested, again, as I mentioned before, we have a free community for you guys. It's in our school community. It is completely free to join. And my goal with this community is really just to have a place to collaborate with one another and pay it forward, grow, learn from one another. I know if there's anything that has helped me in this embodiment is the repetition. And the more that you're around like-minded individuals, the more that you're going to see these positive changes. The more that it's going to be easier for you to reprogram this subconscious brain of yours to really start acting in this assumption of this version of yourself that already exists in the quantum field. With that being said, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today to another episode, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.